Chapter 1021. Overturning the Sky. Dragon Tooth looked like a normal attack. For a low-level skill like Dragon Tooth, if only the damage was considered, the powerful One Autumn Leaf wouldn't even bother to block it. However, the value of Dragon Tooth didn't lie in the damage, but rather the stun effect that it carried. Dragon Tooth could be considered the most used skill among battle mages. It had the greatest coverage. It could be used to start a combo, and in theory, could be used as a follow-up for any skill. In theory. Facing One Autumn Leaf, turning theory into reality wasn't easy. Because One Autumn Leaf was too strong. Due to the character's resistances, the stun from Dragon Tooth would be significantly reduced, leading to many follow-ups with Dragon Tooth being unviable against One Autumn Leaf. This was why God-level characters were fearsome. It wasn't as simple as having higher defense and attack. Strong resistances greatly limited the opponent's options. These limitations weren't just the result of piling stats on a character. The R&D teams would adjust the character's stats depending on the player's tendencies. The character's stats would try to make up for the player's weaknesses, as well as support the player's strengths. This was the problem that Yi Shu saw with Sun Shang and One Autumn Leaf. One Autumn Leaf's switched equipment was still very good, but the synergy between the character and player wasn't as perfect. Strictly speaking, this tiny imperfection couldn't be considered a whole, but Yi Shu couldn't be any more familiar with Battle Mage stats and One Autumn Leaf's original stats. Yi Shu analyzed it bit by bit and turned it into a whole. Eating a Dragon Tooth mid-jump backwards? In the eyes of the spectators, so what? With One Autumn Leaf stats, the stun effect would disappear in a flash. One Autumn Leaf happened to be jumping backwards too. There wasn't any opportunity for Lord Grimm to make any follow-ups after the stun. That jump looked like a beautiful and successful dodge. That's what everyone thought. No one thought that this stun effect wasn't the important point. It was the attack itself that was important. Because before this, Sun Shang had been stunned, which allowed the Dragon Tooth to hit. The Sky Strike changing directions twice tore at the slight imperfection in the synergy between Sun Shang and One Autumn Leaf. If this had been the original One Autumn Leaf, Sun Shang would have been able to block it. But now, he couldn't dodge or block it. This was the scariest part about this attack. Sun Shang was at a loss as One Autumn Leaf landed on the ground. Lord Grimm didn't chase after him, but the spear in Lord Grimm's hands did. Magic undulations coiled around the Myriad Manifestations umbrella into a humongous dragon. Rising Dragon soars the sky. The Myriad Manifestation umbrella's spear form actually transformed into a high-level skill. Even though this skill could only be at the lowest rank 1, this was already an incredibly powerful skill considering Lord Grimm's skill set. One Autumn Leaf hastily rolled to the side. From those movements, it seemed as if Sun Shang was panicking. Yi Shu hadn't hoped for this attack to hit. After Rising Dragon soars the sky, he had hidden a follow-up attack. But this follow-up attack wasn't actually needed. This guy dodged too far, no? Sun Zhang's movements had been too excessive. It was outside of Yi Shu's expectations. Moreover, Sun Shang didn't counterattack as soon as the first clear opportunity appeared. It seemed like he was still thinking about that previous Dragon Tooth. Has his focus been disrupted? That would be a pleasant surprise. Yi Shu hadn't expected Sun Zhang's mental state to tilt after that attack. If a player wasn't focused, the player's reaction speed and playing would slow down. At the highest levels of play, this was enough to be fatal. Lord Grimm's Myriad Manifestations umbrella transformed into a gun form. 3 anti-tank missiles shot towards One Autumn Leaf. If this was the usual Sun Shang in peak condition, he would have just taken these attacks and charged through them, but at this moment, Sun Zhang's reaction speed was clearly a lot slower. By the time he started moving, the missiles had already reached his face. He could only make a roll and dodge these missiles in a crude manner. Lord Grimm quickly approached. Sky Strike. Sun Shang tensed up. He still didn't understand what had happened previously, but he was certain that it wasn't a coincidence. Yi Shu had definitely done it intentionally. Changing the arc of Sky Strike twice was to allow the following Dragon Tooth to hit. Even though there weren't really any follow-up after that Dragon Tooth, that was just one time. What about next time? Sun Shang didn't dare to be negligent. When the Sky Strike arrived, he chose to dodge it. Yi Shu smirked. Sun Shang gave up on blocking with an attack and instead chose to dodge. For Sun Xiang, that was equivalent to giving up on what he was best at. Blocking with an attack fit Sun Jiang's personality best. It was also what was easiest for him. He was still very good at dodging, but it wasn't what he liked to do. If he had a choice, Sun Xiang would very rarely choose to dodge. But now, he felt compelled to choose what he didn't like to do. That was easier than I thought. Yi Shu thought to himself, and had Lord Grimm continued chasing, it was just a sky strike. It wasn't enough for him to gain the upper hand. Yi Shu had many more things for Sun Xiang to enjoy, all of which happened after Lord Grimm's health dropped to 10%. Sun Xiang was in a daze. Yi Shu's attacks weren't sharp, but they were very precise. Every attack targeted a vital point. He hit where it hurt. Sun Xian felt uncomfortable. In his 3 years as a pro player, he had never felt so uncomfortable before. It wasn't like he had never fought against Yi Shu before. When he had been part of Team Conquering Clouds, he had fought against Team Excellent Era 3 times. And in 2 of those, Sun Xiang and Yi Shu had faced each other in the individual competition. Even though he lost both times, Yi Shu had been using the Battle God 1 Autumn Leaf. On the other hand, Sun Xiang was using a so-so pro character from a mid to low tier team. Although he lost, the fights had been very close. Sun Xiang had had a good chance of winning. If he, too, had a character like 1 Autumn Leaf, perhaps the results would have been different. That was what many people said after those matches. That season, Sun Xiang had been a spectacular rookie. Using a normal character, he challenged Yi Shu in the Battle God 1 Autumn Leaf. Losing by only a sliver of health, even in defeat, Sun Xiang basked in glory. If I had 1 Autumn Leaf, I definitely would have won. It wasn't just others who thought that. Sun Xiang thought that as well. Later on, he came to possess of 1 Autumn Leaf. Because of him, Yi Shu was forced to leave the team and announce his retirement. This made Sun Xiang truly feel like the winner. He looked forward to the future awaiting him. And then under his lead, Excellent Era was like a wild horse out of control and was relegated. This was an embarrassment. It hadn't been easy for Sun Xiang to accept. He wanted to prove himself. But the Challenger League led Excellent Era back into the alliance through the Challenger League? How could that be considered proof? For Excellent Era, this should be as easy as eating food. What's more, after getting relegated, they even got Shao Shikan to come over. It looked like he could only endure for this upcoming year. That was what Sun Xiang originally thought. However, then there were rumors of Yi Shu forming his own team and joining the Challenger League. This piece of news was like a stimulant for Sun Xiang. After switching ace players, Team Excellent Era's placings improved slightly before directly falling into relegations. The controversy over Sun Xiang was quite big. Comparing him to the former captain Yi Chu was very normal. The club firmly stood by his side the entire time, but in reality, Sun Xiang needed to prove himself. The Challenger League wasn't enough for him to prove himself. Sun Xiang could only impatiently wait for the next year, so he could shut up those who said he was worse than Yi Chu. Who would have thought that an opportunity would arrive in the Challenger League? This instantly made the Challenger League interesting. For him, this was a stage meant for the two of them. How well would Team Happy perform? How would he lead Team Excellent Era? The finale would only happen when the two sides clashed. It was a finale that he and the media would look forward to. That year, he lost because his character wasn't as good as 1 Autumn Leaf. And now, he possessed 1 Autumn Leaf. He would let Yi Shu witness just how powerful his battle god was. At this moment, Sun Xiang didn't hurry to beat Yi Shu. He was like a cat playing with his food, showing off his superiority. Just winning this match wasn't enough. He needed everyone to see that beating Yi Shu was a trivial matter to him. But now, why was it like this? Another attack hit. This was a sword slash chasing after 1 Autumn Leaf. It was a very accurate read. What's going on? We know that going berserk at 10% health was just a joke, but why did it actually happen when Lord Grimm's health reached 10%? Even though Lord Grimm didn't follow through with any combos, it was obvious who had the upper hand. Sun Jiang's 1 Autumn Leaf seems to be struggling. What's going on? The commentator, Pan Lin, shouted, but he didn't get a response like he had anticipated. He turned to look at his casting partner. Li Yibo was puzzled. He clearly wasn't prepared for something like this to happen. He had been singing Sun Shang high praises the entire time, saying how Sun Shang was playing well and suppressing Yi Shu. How did Yi Shu suddenly overturn the sky in the blink of an eye? Moreover, why was the advantage so obvious? What's going on? You're asking me? I'm the one who wants to find someone to ask. Today's match was making him feel very depressed. Chapter 1022. Rolling Meat. Lord Grimm, who only had 10% health remaining, clearly held the upper hand. A professional commentator wasn't needed to see that. Lord Grimm's 10% health seemed to be immovable, as if he had become invincible. On the other hand, one autumn leaf was like an open faucet, gushing blood. Even a berserker wouldn't trade their health like this. This was irrefutable proof that one autumn leaf was at the disadvantage. One autumn leaf still had half of his health left. In the previous exchanges, Sun Shang had been constantly giving Lord Grimm heavy injuries. He had felt the thrill of a predator playing with its food. He had felt like the fight was under his complete control. Yi Shu seemed to be struggling, trying to hang on to his life. It's useless. Your time is already over. Sun Shang had been preparing to say these words the moment he won, but at this moment, the situation had flipped. No, to be more accurate, who had the upper hand was even more clear now. Before, Sun Shang could feel his opponent struggle, but now, Sun Shang couldn't even struggle. Every attack from Lord Grimm would make his head go blank as he failed to come up with any sort of counterplay. Where did I go wrong? Sun Shang was feeling fretful. He watched as his health slowly bled away. He originally had 50% of his health left. In the blink of an eye, it turned to 30%. When his health reached 20%, he thought to himself, what had he done so far? He couldn't even struggle. He had been waiting for this opportunity to come for so long, and this was going to be the outcome? In this match, the wide disparity between both sides could be easily seen. He was young and brimming with talent. He was destined to leave his mark on the Glory Alliance in the near future. On the other hand, his opponent had been in retirement for a year. His most resplendent achievements had been made 6 years ago. He possessed the Battle God One Autumn Leaf. If the Battle God claimed second, no character would dare to claim first. On the other hand, his opponent had only just started leveling his character when the 10th server opened. It was a small character with a name that even begged to be laughed at. TL, a more accurate translation for Lord Grimm would be please don't laugh. He had gone into the fight at full health, while his opponent had just finished an intense match and only had half of his health left. Even though Lord Grimm was given time to recover, it was only until 70% health. The two sides hadn't started from the same line. For this match, let alone losing, Sun Shang wouldn't even accept an even match. But now, he seemed to be walking towards the abyss of defeat with every step he took, while Yi Shu's Lord Grimm was behind him, pushing him closer towards that abyss. Lose like this? No. Sun Jiang's spirit suddenly rose as he saw Lord Grimm slash towards his head. He immediately had one autumn leaf scrunch up into a ball and roll to the side. He wasn't out of Lord Grimm's attack range. It could be said that this dodge wasn't successful. It was a roll that no skilled player would have done. But Sun Shang did it. Not waiting for the commentators to note this mistake, one autumn leaf dodged the blade, but didn't get up and instead continued to roll to the side. It was too ugly to look at. Along with Lord Grimm's swing and the rolling one autumn leaf, it made the viewers think of the phrase, rolling meat ***. This wasn't a good phrase. To make people think of this phrase signified just how unsightly one autumn leaf looked right now. The character that was known as the Great Battle God and always viewed as Glory's #1 character, it could actually move in such a vile manner? The crowd instantly fell into silence. Excellent Era's fans had trouble responding. As for Excellent Era's players? Dao Zhan was embarrassed. He even glanced to his left and right like a little thief, as if he didn't want others to see one autumn leaf's unsightly appearance. Unfortunately, his hopes wouldn't come true. It wasn't just the crowd that saw this, but also the millions of people watching the broadcast. The entire Glory world might have frozen at this moment. One autumn leaf actually rolled several times in a row to get away from Lord Grimm's combo. Would Yi Shu be startled by this ugly move? Of course not. No one knew better than him that, although one autumn leaf's several rolls looked very ugly, these rolls were truly effective. Sun Shang managed to save himself from Lord Grimm's combo with that. The rhythm had been broken. At this moment, the other side would most likely counter-attack, and with Sun Jiang's personality, the counter-attack would only be that much more impatient. Yi Shu didn't dare to be negligent. He hastily had Lord Grimm move back 2 steps to distance himself from his opponent. However, Yi Shu discovered that one autumn leaf did the same thing. Not only was Sun Shang not in a hurry to counter-attack, he had his character retreat to distance himself. This guy, focused again. Yi Shu was startled. The two characters confronted each other. Neither side made any rash moves. One autumn leaf was at 20% health. Lord Grimm was at 10% health. One autumn leaf's advantage was obvious, but he looked to be on the losing side. Not rushing forward to attack in this type of situation wasn't Sun Jiang's style. This guy was the type to think of himself as invincible, even if he only had 1% of his health left, and would charge forward proudly to fight with his opponent. But at this moment, he unexpectedly chose to retreat? Normal players might not understand what this implied, but those who understood Sun Jiang's style would immediately notice this abnormality. Pan Lin and Li Yibo quickly explained this abnormality to everyone. Was this a talent about to go berserk? The two commentators concluded. The two characters started to move. They didn't rush forward, but instead moved horizontally, slowly closing the distance between them. Lord Grimm had long-ranged attacks, but he didn't use them at this moment. Instead, he maintained practically the same rhythm as Sun Jiang's one autumn leaf. Both sides have begun to play more cautiously. Neither side plans on making any rash moves, Li Yibo said. This makes me think of when two masters confront each other in wuxia stories. Even though they're just standing still, neither side has any holes. Whoever moves first is the first to expose an opening, Pan Lin said. Wow, it really does feel like that, Li Yibo said. Then is Sun Shang about to burst forth? Pan Lin asked. He was clearly hoping for this to happen. However, that wasn't what happened. After the two sides carefully moved around, in the end, they started fighting again. Soon afterwards, Sun Jiang's one autumn leaf was suppressed again. A talent about to go berserk? What a joke. Pan Lin and Li Yibo once again felt like they had fallen into a trap. Sun Shang doesn't seem to have any way out of the combo. Pan Lin returned back to the previous topic. When the two sides fought a few minutes ago, that was pretty much all he said. The match seemed to have gone back to the old road. Only Yi Shu knew that that wasn't the case. Before, he had been carefully probing out the level of synergy between Sun Shang and one autumn leaf and then found small holes he could exploit. But now, it was the reverse. Sun Shang had started testing what those problems were using Yi Shu's Lord Grimm. Previously, Sun Jiang's mind kept going blank. He wasn't focused, making it so he wasn't able to figure out where the problems lay. But this time, it was different. He was fully focused now. Sun Shang was keenly inspecting where his problems were. The holes that Yi Shu had found were being patched up. One autumn leaf's health was still bleeding away. Excellent Era's fans watched on with worry, but Sun Shang wasn't the same. The more he played, the calmer he became. He found the problems one by one. These holes that Yi Shu had uncovered couldn't help but make Sun Shang somewhat fearful. These were problems that he himself hadn't been aware of, yet Yi Shu was actually able to find them. And everything had been figured out during the match? He really is terrifying. This was the first time Sun Shang felt fear. He had fought against Yi Shu twice before. Even though he lost both times, the only thought he had was that he only lost by a little bit. If he was the one with one autumn leaf, then he would certainly have a crushing victory. It was only now did he wake up from his delusion. One autumn leaf's title as battle god hadn't come from just the silver equipment on him. It was a character that had been raised step by step under Yi Shu's control. The title was granted to the character, but in reality, the title should be granted to the player. It was the player who brought glory to the character. Sun Shang finally understood just how terrifying the battle god was. However, this wasn't going to stop Sun Jiang's desire to win. His pride always told him that no matter how great the opponent was, he was better. The holes were quickly repaired. As soon as he figured out the problems, he just needed to be more aware to eliminate them. The imperfect synergy between him and his character was still there, but that itself wasn't fatal. It just meant that it wasn't perfect. Sun Shang had actually been quite happy about this discovery. His imperfect form could beat Yi Shu. Wasn't that even greater evidence of his skill? The opportunity to counter-attack was almost here. Sun Shang looked at one autumn leaf's health. 10%. He had also locked onto this moment. On the other hand, Lord Grimm's health hadn't gone down since then. It was pretty much at 10% too. Perfect. Everyone's on an equal playing field. A fair victory begins now. When one autumn leaf's health dropped to 10%, Sun Shang finally sounded the horn to counterattack. Chapter 1023. The classic 0.03% kill. Dragon Tooth. Sun Shang didn't do any theatrics. He used the simplest of initiations for battle mage combos. After jumping backwards a little to avoid it, Lord Grimm swung with a sky strike. Sun Shang immediately composed himself to deal with it. When Yi Shu had managed to use this to create an opening, he had done so by changing Sky Strike's trajectory. So this time, Sun Shang didn't bother to get one autumn leaf to block and instead sidestepped by 3 body units, swerving to Lord Grimm's flank. Lord Grimm twisted, Sky Strike chasing after him. That was when one autumn leaf suddenly blocked it. Could there be any more variations to Sky Strike? No, the upward stabbing of Sky Strike wasn't endless and limitless. If you kept stabbing up, then wouldn't you just end up throwing your weapon away? One autumn leaf's 3 body unit sidestep had pulled this Sky Strike far enough so that it couldn't be modified any further. Even so, Sun Shang didn't hold back from his habitual reaction, block. This actually wasn't just Sun Zhang's personal habit and style. Battle mages needed their attacks to hit in order to stockpile chasers. Blocks were considered hits by the system, so they could also produce chasers. Thus, all battle mages would block if possible. The current Sun Shang didn't deviate from this and neither did the past Yi Shu. So, Yi Shu knew that while Sun Shang had done a lot of dodging before, he would still choose to block when it came down to it. He couldn't just dodge instead of block to cover for his openings because if he did that with a battle mage, he would only be reducing his own strength. Blocks were mostly defensive techniques for other classes, but for the battle mage, blocks were an offense in a defense. Then, when their opponent became too concerned about not letting the battle mage create chasers and intentionally avoided the blocks, the true fatal power of the block was revealed. It had created chaos in the opponent's rhythm. Thus, no battle mage would easily let go of blocks. For Sun Shang to temporarily give up his habits and resort to dodging so often was an extremely rare and commendable effort. His pride wouldn't allow him change his style so completely. He had experienced the terror of fighting Yi Shu, but he wouldn't cower because of it. He wanted Yi Shu to experience his skill, too. The block swept forth brazenly. This Sky Strike had lost the effect and power it originally was meant to have, so Yi Shu obviously wouldn't send it over and gift one autumn leaf with a chaser. Sky Strike was cancelled and one autumn leaf's block hit air. This created a great opening to take advantage of. The block of the battle mage would bring this sort of trouble to their opponent. Should you let him block or not? Yi Shu had chosen the latter, giving Sun Shang a chance to mount an offensive. A falling flower palm was thrown out at Lord Grimm. Mounting an offense often necessitated a lot of low-level skills, as they were fast to activate. As for powerful skills, if you didn't pave a road for them, you would already be late to the game by the time you unleashed them. As for this quick falling flower palm of one autumn leafs, Yi Shu didn't seem to have much of a choice but to have Lord Grimm return with his own falling flower palm. The palms of the 2 characters hit, and released a magical pulse that swept up the dust and dirt around them. Lord Grimm's figure skidded backwards. How could Lord Grimm compete with one autumn leaf in priority for the same skill? This clash had still given one autumn leaf a chaser. Battle mages had a total of 5 chasers, unleashed through one of 5 low-level skills: Sky Strike, Dragon Tooth, Double Stab, Falling Flower Palm, and Circle Swing. Because of chasers, battle mages relied on low-level skills a lot. Falling Flower Palm had ended with Lord Grimm being pushed back. As for one autumn leaf had managed to gain a fire chaser, which was immediately sent out by Sun Shang. A magical pulse like a flickering flame swirled around one autumn leaf's arms. This was the visual effect from the strength buff that the fire chaser gave. As for that big fireball of a chaser, it had already sped towards Lord Grimm. Sun Shang was about to prepare a follow-up attack when something flashed in front of his eyes. What was that? Sun Shang didn't have the time to think, subconsciously having one autumn leaf to dodge. But it was too late. That thing had come too fast, and by the time Sun Shang noticed it, it seemed like his fire chaser had cracked open as if something trying to worm its way through. Lord Grimm's attack used the fire chaser as cover. The finesse this required was unreal. Sun Shang hadn't noticed it at first, only reacting when it had shot through the fire chaser, but by then it was already too late. He was shot. Lord Grimm had sent out a bullet and one autumn leaf was immediately stunned when it hit. This wasn't the small stun from a normal shot. That minuscule effect would do nothing against a powerful character like one autumn leaf. This was a stun bullet, a low-level skill of the Spearfire class, and stun was its crucial effect. Then, a blade flashed and cut the fire chaser in half before striking the stunned one autumn leaf with a sword draw. In this exchange, it was clear that one autumn leaf had not benefited. The only gains he had was the fire chaser that was buffed his strength. However, the one with the initiative was still Lord Grimm. After the sword draw, the myriad manifestation umbrella didn't change forms, already following up with a collapsing mountain. One autumn leaf hastily dodged, jumping backwards, while stabbing forth with evil annihilation, hoping to pull Lord Grimm into a circle swing. Lord Grimm's sword swerved. The collapsing mountain missed one autumn leaf entirely and struck evil annihilation instead. One autumn leaf gained another chaser, but who would be more clear on the gains and losses of these chasers than Yi Shu? He knew which chasers he could afford to give and which he couldn't. He wasn't the kind of person who would be troubled by a battle mage's blocks because, unfortunately, he was the one who created this playstyle. Giving one autumn leaf a chaser had allowed Lord Grimm to close in. Sun Shang was uncomfortable. He had thought he had the situation under control, but he never expected that it would spiral away from him again. That was when Yi Shu stopped using those openings and came at him head-on with these attacks. The careful preparation Sun Shang had made to deal with Yi Shu's tricks was for naught. Of course, he wasn't afraid of this direct and straightforward brawl, and would even have an advantage due to his young age and stamina. Yet now, he had to keep his guard up against another possibility, where he might fall into a trap due to a subconscious action. So, he had to stay absolutely focused. With Sun Shang completely focused, it wouldn't be easy to distract him, but having to focus on so many aspects was definitely draining. It was good that Sun Shang was young so he could endure. Let's see who'll make it to the end. Sun Shang gritted his teeth, advancing and having one autumn leaf meet Lord Grimm blow for blow, while also paying attention to the modifications each of Lord Grimm's strikes could go through, determined to not fall into that real-life stun again. The overall situation resulted in a deadlock. The health of both sides dropped, 9%, 7%, 6%. Who would reach 0 first? No one could guess. In this moment, either side could be the victor. However, looking at the big picture, Yi Shu had been at a disadvantage when the match began, so he had already won by being able to reach this point, fighting Sun Shang. Unfortunately, that wasn't how matches were judged. The true victor was the one who was left standing. Who would it be? Many people in the audience stood up, as if they wouldn't be able to see clearly otherwise. However, after they did that, the people sitting behind them really couldn't see. Some people began to argue and others just stood up as well, thus, the majority of the present audience had come to their feet to continue watching the match. The excellent era fans had already forgotten to cheer. This crucial moment made them just as tense as the players on the field. Curse arrows. That was when Lord Grimm summoned several small black arrows with curse arrows while dodging one autumn leaf's attack, hoping to slow down one autumn leaf's momentum. However, when victory was in grasp, curse arrows. That wouldn't be able to kill him, so there was no way he was letting this chance go. One autumn leaf advanced in spite of the damage. Stronger characters held an advantage in situations like this. Often, they could afford to be more aggressive than other characters, because in situations where other characters couldn't hold on, they could. Slide kick. Seeing one autumn leaf charge forth, Lord Grimm didn't retreat and charged as well. One autumn leaf jumped up, spear stabbing down at the slide-kicking Lord Grimm with a circle swing. Lord Grimm rolled to avoid it and knelt on one knee, swinging open the myriad manifestations umbrella and shooting furiously with Gatling gun. Sun Shang was even more direct. One autumn leaf, falling from his jump, shook his spear and suddenly, a tumultuous magical pulse exploded out from evil annihilation. He had somehow managed to unleash a rising dragon soars the sky in the time it took for Lord Grimm to roll. Gatling gun's bullets came in a flood, but compared to rising dragon soars the sky, who would die? Sun Shang smirked. Unspecialized was something no one had much experience dealing with. However, since it had popped up, and they knew there was a possibility of facing it, why wouldn't Excellent Era put effort into researching it? The only thing Excellent Era lacked was the myriad manifestations umbrella. As for unspecialized accounts, they had began leveling several of them up after realizing they might meet Yishu and Lord Grimm in the Challenger League. Excellent Era had spent no expense to deal with Yishu. They had tried to research the myriad manifestations umbrella, but in the end they had gotten nowhere. However, if Excellent Era didn't look into the possibilities one could achieve with an unspecialized and such a weapon, then they didn't deserve to be called a pro team. There was no contest in who would benefit in an exchange between Gatling Gun and Rising Dragon Soars the Sky. Yishu obviously couldn't just let this exchange happen and hastily had Lord Grimm dodge. Want to escape? It's too late. Rising Dragon Soars the Sky's dragon head swerved towards Lord Grimm. Rising Dragon soars the sky, dragon raises its head. The audience exploded into cheers. From their perspective, this was the deciding strike in the match. However, it wasn't. Lord Grimm's movements were extremely precise. He seemed to have calculated Rising Dragon Soars the Sky's pathing and, with a single step, was already behind the dragon's head. That was when everyone saw that the dragon head, which had already swerved to the side, twisted even further, almost in the completely opposite direction. Ah, Pan Lin screamed in excitement in the live broadcast, dragon raises its head? No, this isn't it. This is no long dragon raises its head, it's already a dragon looks back. The new technique for Rising Dragon Soars the Sky had been christened by Pan Lin Spectacular. This is probably a technical modification made possible after the level 75 update. Even Li Yibo, who was usually rather calm and tried to appear omniscient, couldn't hold back his excitement anymore. Rising Dragon Soars the Sky hits. This is a new technique, dragon looks back. As expected of a team with the battle god. They are a representation of the greatest skill level a battle mage can reach. In this match alone, we've witnessed two new battle mage techniques. Pan Lin yelled. He was about to announce victory, but then suddenly saw that, while Lord Grimm had been hit by the Rising Dragon Soars the Sky, he hadn't died. He had managed to perform a guard behind his back, managing to catch this attack. However, the amount of damage guard could reduce was limited and Rising Dragon Soars the Sky wasn't something it could neutralize. Lord Grimm, a guard at his back, was thrown forward by this attack, skidding all the way in front of one autumn leaf. However, his health wasn't completely gone. The broadcast immediately switched to a close-up. 0.03%. Lord Grimm's health had fallen to the point where they needed 2 digits after the decimal point to express it. This was probably an amount that one autumn leaf could destroy with a punch, even after throwing away Evil Annihilation. Yet, the current one autumn leaf was still trapped in the ending lag of Rising Dragon Soars the Sky. No matter how amazing Sun Jiang's mechanics were, it was impossible for him to do anything right now. Lord Grimm had been pushed directly in front of Sun Jiang's one autumn leaf by one autumn leaf. He only had 0.03% of his health left, but he struck the true deciding blow. The entire stadium had gone silent and the commentator Pan Lin gaped. In this moment, he couldn't think of anything to describe the scene before him. Such a spectacular Rising Dragon Soars the Sky dragon looks back didn't manage to kill the opponent, but instead pushed the opponent in front of himself and sent himself to death. Pan Lin had originally thought out what he was going to say. Sun Shang, using a mutation of Rising Dragon Soars the Sky even more spectacular than the dragon raises its head that Yishu created, managed to defeat Yishu. What a meaningful, amazing way of succeeding the old with the new. This scene could have been a perfect ending to this battle, turning it into a classic moment remembered by all those who played Glory. But now it was all gone. All Lord Grimm did was guard. Though placing a guard behind a character's back had some degree of difficulty, it was still a level 20 and under skill. How could that possibly compare to Dragon Looks Back? 0.03%. Just that 0.03%, an amount of health that would be lost in any exchange, somehow managed to last till the end. If it didn't, then so long as Lord Grimm was killed, the classic moment wouldn't have to be changed, even with that guard. Yet now, nothing was the same. The sixth match of the Challenger League finals went to Happy, Yishu, and Lord Grimm. That's right, Lord Grimm. Chapter 1024. That also counts as a 1v3? On stage, the last one standing was Lord Grimm. One autumn leaf lay at his feet. One autumn leaf had once brought Yi Shu boundless glory. This time, it was his opponent, and it fell by his hand. The crowd was silent. Team Happy's few fans had also forgotten to cheer. He won. They had a hard time believing it. One autumn leaf's rising dragon soars the sky had been filled with vigor. Dragon raising its head into dragon looks back. Such a crazy technique made them believe that Lord Grimm had fallen. But the last one standing on stage was Lord Grimm. What exactly happened in that moment? The broadcast took great pains to replay that moment. In comparison, Yi Shu's final blow to One Autumn Leaf wasn't anything special. He just took advantage of the ending lag from One Autumn Leaf's high-level move and did a quick combo. Neither side had much health left, so a quick combo was enough to finish off One Autumn Leaf. The broadcast replayed the clip. It followed Lord Grimm and showed the moment he blocked the dragon looks back from behind. 0.03% health. The clip intentionally zoomed in on Lord Grimm's health. What a spectacular block. However, it was extremely risky. That final 0.03% health left is evidence of that. If that block had been off in the slightest, it would have been a different result. Pan Lin came out of his disappointment and commented on the replay. For him personally, he had no bias towards Yi Shu or Sun Xiang. He just wanted more to talk about. Sun Zhang's dragon looks back giving the final blow to Yi Shu would definitely have been much more exciting. Pan Lin looked at things from the media's point of view. He had hoped for more flashy performances. The outcome made him a bit disappointed, but he had to admit that this fight had been a brilliant one. Coach Li, 0.03% health. Do you think that Yi Shu actually planned for that to happen or was it just luck? Pan Lin asked. Li Yibo was annoyed. Can you not ask me to guess what Yi Shu was thinking? Pan Lin saw Li Yibo furrow his brows without saying anything. He immediately feigned as if those words were just a sigh and switched topics. In the crowd, Team Tiny Herb's 3 players were discussing this question. Probably luck? 0.03% health. That number is too precise. I think it's luck, Lu Xiaobi expressed. As a blade master, he naturally had a deep understanding of blocking and knew the difficulty of executing such a block. Under normal situations, it'd be nearly impossible to calculate, but Yi Shu should have a very good understanding of his opponent's character, no? So it's possible that he could have such a precise calculation, Xu Bin said. But One Autumn Leaf is a bit different than before from what I see, Gao Yingji said. That's true, Xu Bin nodded his head. So it's luck, Lu Xiaobi said. It's hard to say. In any case, you can't be careless when facing him, Xu Bin said. Will he be our opponent in the future? Lu Xiaobi mumbled softly. Yi Shu's victory had completely changed the atmosphere in the stadium, but the problem was that Happy was still on the losing side. Team Excellent Era still has 2 players left. As for Happy, Lord Grimm only has 0.03% health. He pretty much doesn't count. Even if he tried to hide and recover his health, his opponent probably wouldn't give him enough time. Moreover, Wish Prayer was still on cooldown. In the group arena, there was no recovery after a round was complete. Whatever state you are in when the round ends will be the same at the start of the next round. Happy was still in a disadvantageous position. Excellent Era was a pro team that had experienced hundreds of matches. They wouldn't be shaken by a single loss even if it was their ace player. Lu Xiaobi wasn't wrong. However, he neglected the relationship between Yi Shu and Excellent Era. If it were any other player that took Sun Xiang down, Excellent Era could regain their calm and continue with their advantage, but it was Yi Shu who took down Sun Xiang, the one who was supposed to be his successor. However, Sun Xiang lost. The implications of this loss were simply too great. The instant One Autumn Leaf fell, Team Excellent Era's boss Dao Zhan almost went insane. The importance of this confrontation was as important as the entire finals, yet they lost in such a manner. Lord Grimm only had 0.03% health left. People might not stress this small detail. Yi Shu won. Sun Xiang lost. That was the result. In view of this result, people might talk more about how Lord Grimm wasn't at full health from the beginning. Dao Zan could imagine how the media would ask sharp questions about this fight. How would he explain it when the time came? Dao Zan's expression was incomparably ugly. Excellent Era's other players subconsciously kept their distance from their boss. At this moment, Sun Shang exited the stage to their bench. His gaze was filled with incredulousness. He had actually lost. He had faced a character who was inferior to one autumn leaf and was also not at full health, yet he still lost to Yi Shu. Why did it turn out this way? Am I really not as good as him? This was the first time Sun Shang doubted himself because this time, he couldn't find any excuse. His gaze shifted to the other side at Happy's bench, but he unexpectedly saw Yi Shu also exit the stage. Sun Shang stared blankly. Why did Yi Shu come out? Players were not allowed to leave the stage in the middle of a match. Doing that was equivalent to forfeiting. At this moment, the referee jogged over to Happy's seats. What are you doing? You don't know that players are not allowed to leave the stage mid-match, the referee asked. Leaving was absolutely not permitted, but special circumstances needed to be treated appropriately. For example, if something happened to a player's health or condition. As a result, the referee still asked. I know, but I only have so little health remaining. Is there any point in continuing? Yi Shu said. Can't you do that something? The referee was reserved. He felt too embarrassed to say heal himself. Haha, it's fine. I did a 1v3. I should give the other players a chance, Yi Shu said and continued to walk down from the stage. This move could only be deemed as a forfeit. There weren't any other penalizations. The referee stood there in a daze. 1v3? When did he 1v3? Did he accidentally miscount? How puzzling. The screen in the stadium showed the scoreboard for the group arena. The referee took a glance and nearly coughed blood. From this meticulous scoreboard, it could clearly be seen that Lord Grimm had won against Life Extinguisher. As a result, in theory, Yi Shu did a 1v3. That was certainly true. Xiao Shiken had left the stage in that confrontation. But who didn't know the circumstances? Xiao Shiken had used up all his mana. The two hadn't done anything to each other. Xiao Shiken just typed GG and left. This type of victory counted as a statistic, but how could the player be so bold as to actually count it as one? 1v3? That counts as a 1v3? Chapter 1025. Unexpected. After completing a 1v3, Yi Shu came off stage. Fortunately, these words had only been spoken to the referee. If the whole stadium had heard him, the wind from the booze could probably directly blow Yi Shu out of the building. Yi Shu and Sun Shang left the player booths at almost exactly the same time. Naturally, they also reached their seats in their respective team areas at around the same time. Those on Happy's side naturally showed Yi Shu a level of respect normally reserved for heroes, but what about Excellent Era? Dao Zan was extremely gloomy. Yet, he still had to pat Sun Shang on the back and console him. Not bad. You were only off by a tiny bit. Indeed. 0.03%. Wasn't that just a tiny bit? Yet, this small bit had been the difference between heaven and hell. Sun Shang felt infinitely conflicted, and could only stare at Team Happy's side. In regards to the boss's words of comfort, he said nothing, only nodding his head before sitting alone to the side. We have to win the next round. At this moment, Dao Zan gave a desperate command. Even though they were a well-known and experienced team with all kinds of knowledge in coping with difficult situations, Sun Shang had been defeated by Yi Shu. This wasn't as simple as an ace player losing a match. Yi Shu had always had an unusual effect on Excellent Era. Although Excellent Era was still clearly in the lead, the entire atmosphere of the stadium had changed after Yi Shu's victory. All the Excellent Era fans had become uncharacteristically silent, as had the previously prideful and arrogant Sun Shang. After warning the next player to go on stage, Dao Zan once again glanced over towards Happy's side, his heart sinking at what he saw. Sun Jeping. Surprisingly, Happy's fifth player in the group arena was actually Sun Jeping. Dao Zan glanced at Xiao Shiken, someone he relied heavily on. Prior to the competition, when they were deciding their lineup, the vice-captain had guessed that Sun Jeping wouldn't come on stage during the group arena. As a first-generation god, Sun Jeping would obviously receive a lot of media attention after suddenly joining Happy. Many reporters present were looking for an opportunity to interview him. With Sun Jeping's personality, he obviously wouldn't cover up his hand injury. He calmly informed the reporters of his current situation. Thus, Xiao Shikins had assessed the situation and reached the conclusion that Sun Jeping would only be able to play in one of the rounds, either the group arena or the team competition, in the match against Excellent Era. After all, the difficulty in facing Excellent Era couldn't be compared to that of other teams. Unless Sun Jeping decisively forfeited the round when the tides of the battle turned, his hands would definitely have to weather an enormous amount of strain. If he appeared in both the group arena and the team competition, the burden would really be too heavy for him to bear. Except, he was an extremely strong player. This could be easily seen in the few matches in which he had appeared on stage before. As a result, Xiao Shikin had believed that he would definitely conserve his strength during the group arena, and instead come out during the more important team competition. However, Sun Jeping was actually Happy's last player in the group arena. This was very unexpected in Xiao Shikin's eyes. In this position, if the previous players fell behind, a huge burden would be placed on Sun Jeping's shoulders. Like right now, he would have to face two players back-to-back. Regardless of whether he won or lost, after facing this kind of strain, would he still be able to compete in the team round? Could it be that the reports by the media were false? Dao Zhan wondered. That's not likely. Xiao Shikin replied. He had entered the alliance at a time when the Hundred Blossoms duo, Zhang Jiali and Sun Jeping, had been at its peak. Thus, he had a good understanding of this god. This kind of scheming behavior outside of a match wasn't in line with Sun Jeping's personality at all. In Xiao Shikin's eyes, this man was the type of person who wouldn't hide his true circumstances. Even if he made a mistake, he was the type of person to face it head-on like a real man instead of trying to pretend it didn't happen. To make a big deal out of something like a minor hand injury really didn't seem like something he would do. These years of retirement would be enough for him to change his temperament. Yet, seeing his performance on stage, he seemed just as fierce, wild, and untamed as before. In light of these circumstances, there was only one plausible explanation: Sun Jeping would not be appearing in the team competition. Then, who would be appearing in the team competition? In this way, Excellent Era's lineup for the team round would be disrupted. Xiao Shikin had no idea that Sun Jeping, the definitive number 2 player in Happy who could even be called Yishu's equal, would actually not be appearing in the team competition? This was actually as unexpected as one not bringing a cleric to the team competition. In any case, the lineup for the team competition had long since been decided. There was no way to change it now. Luckily, he would be able to give the other players instructions during the team competition. When the time came to battle, he would simply have to make adjustments based on the situation. Xiao Shikin took a deep breath, stopping his train of analyses and conjectures. He turned back to calmly watch the match. From Team Happy, Sun Jeping stepped onto stage. Excellent Era sent out Shen Jian, a striker player. This was likely the only group arena match today in which Happy appeared to be the stronger contender on paper. Sun Jeping was a former god. Although he had retired for many years, it was due to an injury, not because his condition was slipping. Zhang Jiali, who had been a player of the same generation as him, was still lively on stage. If not for the hand injury, Sun Jeping shouldn't be any worse than Zhang Jiali was now, so he should still be at the same level of an all-star. What about Excellent Era's Shen Jian then? In Excellent Era, he could probably only be considered average. Before Sun Shang came to Excellent Era, when Excellent Era's troop arrangements during the team competition were relatively stable, the lineup was made up of Yishu's Battle Mage, Su Mucheng's Launcher, Lu Hao's Spellblade, Guo Yang's Qi Master, and Zhang Jiaxing's Cleric. He Ming's Elementalist was usually their 6th player. Shen Jian could be considered their substitute player. Depending on who their opponents were, he would sometimes have a chance to go on stage. After Yishu left, Excellent Era was relegated. Right afterwards, both Lu Hao and He Ming were traded for Xiao Shikin, and Guo Yang left soon after. Of Excellent Era's original lineup, only Su Mucheng and Zhang Jiaxing remained. As a player with a decent amount of strength and battle experience, Shen Jian also naturally rose in the food chain, joining the main roster. Excellent Era was a powerhouse team. Being able to rise to the position of a substitute player showed that Shen Jian already possessed an impressive amount of skill. In a weaker team, he might even be considered a strong member. However, in the face of Sun Jeping, this kind of player was evidently still not enough. Right now, the only thing that made people worry was that Sun Jeping had retired due to an injury, before suddenly appearing in the scene once more after so many years. It was said that he still hadn't entirely recovered. Then, when all was said and done, how much strength did this player truly have left? His previous performances could be considered powerful, but Excellent Era's level was not the same as those other teams. Shen Jian was previously only a sub for the team, and even now, he was just a normal player on the main roster. If he was tossed in a team like Mysterious Fantasy or Jade Dynasty, he might even become their core player. In the face of this kind of player, would Sun Jeping still be able to showcase the same kind of overpowering performances he had before? This competition left the audience in this kind of suspense. In this match, the attention wouldn't be focused on Excellent Era's player. In the spotlight was Sun Jeping, the former #1 berserker. Yes, the topic had once again become focused on Sun Jeping. Team Happy, why were they always casually tossed to the side?